This is the Sony ST-242 AM/FM tuner. It's from 1981. Now, as you know, I love gimmicks. Since I already have a complete hi-fi system that I'm happy with, I'm not really in this to get the most expensive premium gear. I want unusual. I want equipment that does stuff I've never seen, or does it in a way that I've never seen, or just something that looks really cool. This stereo tuner shocked me when I opened it up. It also surprised me. So like usual, we're going to go over everything, and then I want to show you why this unassuming little Sony tuner is a little odd. Stick around. As I said earlier, this is the Sony ST-242 FM/AM program tuner. It's the simpler little brother of the Sony STR-242. While this is just a radio tuner, the STR-242 is also a receiver amplifier. This is a completely analog tuner, but it has 5 programmable FM station memory slots. That right there is a clue that there's something a little bit unusual going on. So let's take a little tour. The face of the unit is a handsome brushed aluminum. You've got your power button on the left, your softly lit tuner scale with its shiny needle indicator and diminutive number font, and your large tuning knob on the right. Dig that matte finish. Below that, you have your selector switch for FM and AM. Now, this is a North American unit. It only has the 2 options. Outside of North America, you would have the ST-242L, which splits the AM into a long wave and a medium wave section, and the selector would be a 3-way switch with all 3 options. On the far right end of the tuner scale, you have the signal strength indicator, which has 5 green LEDs that, as their name suggests, will show how strong a signal is, and in conjunction with that is the FM tuned light. That will come on when you found the center or peak of your signal, which would be the best reception of that signal. Next to it is a red light, which indicates whether you've got a stereo multiplexed signal. You can switch the muting circuit on and off, and with that, you're switching from stereo to mono. This also activates and deactivates the red stereo light. Muting the static hiss only gives you access to the strongest stations. To listen to the weaker stations, you sacrifice having a stereo signal. That's pretty common among less expensive units like this. We saw something very similar on the Technics ST-S3 that I covered a few videos ago. There are 5 programmable FM station buttons. Those, of course, are so you can find a station and save it for quick access later. The 5 buttons correspond to little lights under the tuner scale, with the brightest light representing the selected button. To program one, you press and hold the FM program button on the far left, and then you can move each light back and forth and drop it exactly on the station you want. You do that by actually pushing it around with the tuning needle. You can even bunch them all up if you want to. The memory only holds FM frequencies though. AM, you just have to kind of dial it in every time. Now this is an analog tuner. There's no digital memory of any kind. So how the heck are the stations actually being saved? Well, unlike almost every analog radio tuner that I myself have ever seen, this thing doesn't have a big shiny variable capacitor with the little metal blades that spin around and tune your station. Instead, they've taken the tuner and spread it longwise so it's thin, sort of stretched like butter spread over too much bread. The needle indicator is directly attached to a wiper contact that slides back and forth on a conductive strip. Technically, several conductive strips. By laying the tuner out longwise, they're able to place little clips that have contacts and LED lights on them that you can move back and forth, which do essentially the same thing as the movable tuning wiper. In fact, they do exactly the same thing. The only difference is that they're not directly connected to the tuner knob, and they're normally locked in place when the FM program button isn't pressed. The program buttons will override the FM/AM selector switch, so even if it's on AM, hitting a program button will still give you your pre-selected FM station. If you want to just spin the dial and look for stations, you can hit the manual tuning button. The red LED above it lets you know it's selected. Again, that's the only condition that allows you to listen to AM stations. If you look at the top, there are 2 little plastic pegs. Like most units of this era, this is one of a whole line of components which matched and were meant to be stacked. The pegs line up perfectly with little holes in the feet on the underside. I don't have any other components from this particular line, but you can see it if I set the body on top of the shell. That's actually a very helpful feature on this otherwise very not grippy metal case. Feature-wise, the ST-242 doesn't do much more than play radio. In fact, it doesn't do anything else. That's its whole job. But it does it quite well considering it's not at all a premium unit. It would have cost about $200 US in 1981, which comes out to about $650 in today's money. As I said, it's the way that it operates, and more specifically, the way it saves the frequencies that I thought was interesting. Truthfully, I just really like the way the little program lights move back and forth with the tuner dial. It's satisfying. Call me nuts, but I really like things like that. So let's flip it around, yeah? The back has an input for an AM antenna, a 75 ohm grounded FM antenna, and a 300 ohm FM antenna. Below that is an external ferrite AM antenna that folds out. One thing I was a little annoyed by, and granted this is just me splitting hairs, but the antenna inputs are for bare wire, and the antenna I just found at the thrift store the other day has spade connectors. But I was able to jury rig a connection anyway, and even with that, the reception was more than adequate. The labeling claims a frequency range of 87.5 to 108 on FM and 530 to 1610 on AM. And unlike the last video, we do have the UL listed sticker, so no aliens to worry about this time. The output RCA cord is hardwired, as is the power cord. So that's all of that. Let's go ahead and open it up because I want you guys to see that weird tuner. To get it open, it's just 4 screws. I love when it's just 4 screws. Wood boxes are great and I think they're beautiful, but there is definitely something to be said for the ease of access that a stamped sheet metal lid provides. Once the screws are out, you can just lift the lid off. The case is mostly empty. There's actually a reason for that. The chassis is used on more than one machine that has a radio tuner, so the other empty space would be filled with amplifier boards and a phono preamp and stuff like that. That's why, for example, this little board is up on its side rather than flat when there's space for it next to the other board. It's always easier to just put it in the same place every time. The weird tuner is right here behind the face panel. It's very hard to see with the camera, but if you look inside this slot, you can see the little program sliders. The tuner is attached to the dial with a spring-tensioned cord that's just wrapped around a couple of pulleys, one on the flywheel and a small one on the other end. Early on, I was surprised to learn that almost every radio with a tuner dial is coupled together with a piece of string. I'm sure there are many reasons for that, not the least of which are the ability to put the variable capacitor wherever is most convenient, and it also electrically isolates the capacitor from the knob and our hands. The incandescent backlights for the display are on either side of this acrylic piece and are soldered directly into their little PCBs, so if you have to change them, be prepared to do a little bit of soldering, which, as I've said before, is not difficult even if you're a first timer. There are lots of really good tutorials here on YouTube, and you can absolutely do it yourself if you're just careful. Before we wrap this up, just look at those little moving lights one more time. You'll have to forgive me, but I just think it's really fun the way that they designed that. With it opened up, you can see the little mechanical lever that unlocks the clips. So that's the Sony ST-242 FM/AM program tuner. Before I go, I just want to remind everybody why we're here, or why I'm here. This channel is meant to encourage first-timers to go out and find secondhand stuff and just play with it. Bring it home. Try it out. The overwhelming majority of opinions online seem to push for only having premium equipment. I can totally understand why they feel that way because the sound quality is arguably superior. But while that standpoint is absolutely valid, a good portion of the time, people don't have the money to afford high-end stuff, or we don't have access to it without paying insane shipping fees. The Goodwill is not just a cornucopia of Marantz receivers, you know? Sometimes you have to take what you can get. I want people to be interested in hi-fi like I am. So if you find something cheap at a thrift store and you want to use it to get your feet wet with this, I say great, go for it. And do not let people make you feel bad for liking it. So before I go, I want to pose a question to all of you. What was your very first secondhand stereo component? And did it do anything unusual or special? Tell me about it in the comments. I love reading that stuff. So until next time, stay metal, guys.